Hmm.
Welcome everyone to Grape Finance's weekly AMA. I'm here with LB again. My name is Nikki, and today we have our very special guest, Lame Hillbilly.
Yeah, how do you?
Is he still in the audience or is he on yet? We need him on stage. There he is. How you doing,
Yo,
man?
yo, 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 yo.
What's going on, man?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
Yeah,
No,
pretty good.
doing pretty all right.
Yeah, man. I just it's early over here for me, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
y'all, no. I appreciate it. Y'all pushed it back until about 8, which is when I normally am up and active. So
Okay,
I
nice.
appreciate it. Never done an AMA when my brain wasn't working, so it's gonna be interesting.
Well, we're relaxed here, easy going, so
That's good.
yeah.
nothing strenuous.
We'll give you some time to get your coffee working.
Yeah, well, I wish I drank coffee. Sadly, it's Red Bulls with a heart condition, so here we are.
Oh man,
Wait,
full
wait,
on.
but Red Bull isn't safer for your heart than coffee.
Yeah, no, I know, but I hate I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I just can't get behind the whole coffee thing. I don't like hot drinks.
Oh, fair
Uh,
enough, fair enough.
It's weird for me, I think it should just be soup that should be hot,
Soup,
that's
yeah,
liquid.
yeah, okay,
That's it for me.
yeah.
Funny though, I had some iced coffee when I was visiting Cambodia, I think, or
Hmm.
Thailand or something like that. They serve iced coffee a lot. It's pretty cool,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
literally.
It's pretty, yeah, literally.
So, so what shall we do? Shall we first go through the AMA questions for Grape, or shall we just have a talk with Lame Hillbilly first? Like, what are you here to
um,
come and tell?
yeah. I don't know. Do you wanna have a chat first?
Whatever you guys wanna do. I've got the entire hour booked. You guys got me for the hour. LB
Nice.
paid me for the hour,
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
gonna work for the hour.
Pricing.
Oh, you get paid. Awesome, awesome. I need to go and talk
I'm
again with LB. Like, hey,
yeah,
hey, what's this?
I'm a pricey guest, man.
Oh man, we better start with you then. Let's see if we got any questions for you, or do you just
I guess some
want
of the
to?
questions are also kind of general as well. We can both
Yeah,
touch on them, or all three of us
uh,
anyway.
yeah, definitely. Um, I'm having a look. Yeah, here there's a question from Bobby One, as asking, how's Grape going to be implemented into Glacier Phi? Is it in the form of X Grape or Grape? I think to answer this question, you need to explain first what Glacier Phi is going to be.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
yeah, yeah. Go
Yeah,
on. Yeah.
so Glacier Phi is a DEX built on Avalanche. Originally, it was going to be a balancer, but due to recent events and news, we had to pivot, and we went with what we think is kind of the current meta, but also a long-standing, efficient model for DEXs, and it is a V33 DEX. And if you're unfamiliar with what a V33 DEX is, because it could give you triggering symptoms when you hear 3-3. Don't worry. It is driven by real revenue. So what essentially happens is that all the revenue driven by fees, which are usually the cheapest fees that you find on that chain,
Mhm.
they all of those fees get given back to governance voters. So what that means is that you're able to take your glacier and lock it into an NFT called V Glacier. You're able to pick lock times, and based on those lock times, it determines how much V Glacier you're getting, which is governance power. You'll vote week over week on pairs, and then those pairs will pay out the fees to holders. So let's say you have Grape Mem as a pair, and you're the only person that voted for that pair, and there's $1,000 in fees. You would receive $1,000 in both Grape and Mem. And so that happens week over week, depending on the votes. And the interesting thing is that it's not a centralized emission model. So like Trader Joe would be giving out emissions based on, the amount of Joe that they're becoming inflationary, and they can just give Joe and point it towards different areas. And usually that causes a farm and dump. But here in Glacier, it is completely decentralized in where the emissions go. So let's say we have three pools: Grape, Walrus, X Grape, and each of those receive 33% votes of the total votes. The new emission model would be 33%, 33%, and 33%. And so, and just to reiterate that point, let's say that one pool got 100% of the votes and the other two got 0%, the emissions would reflect that in the following week. So what happens is it's a very cheap way for protocols to get involved in what we call bribes and fees. And as that pair trades more and as they get more community involvement to vote for these pairs via, Grape Mem, what you'll see is emissions will start increasing for that pool, and then you get more eyes on. And so when the emissions are pointed, unlike in other AMMs, you'll see that LP also gets incentivized by increased LP over time. And we know that's very small amounts. But here it's 100% in Glacier, because Glacier or any of these tokens usually have a really good model for kind of being sustainable and not a farm and dump token, because the real utilization of Glacier isn't through emissions and farm and dumps. It's really locking into these V Glacier scenarios as protocols and everything else. And so you have two options as a protocol. You can obviously get your community to vote, or you yourself can vote for that pool as a protocol. Grape can own Glacier and vote for Grape Mem pairings. But also they can add extra incentives called bribes. And it's a very easy menu that you can go to any LP that we have whitelisted and choose any token and add that to the reward bribe. So you can incentivize through more Glacier on that pair that can be distributed to holders, and all of that's represented in dollar value for users to see, like, oh, look at this pair has 300% APR for Glacier, and then it also has an extra $2,000, $3,000 in bribes. And this could be people that don't know anything about Grape and say, oh, look at these, this pair, and let's look in more into it. And it really opens the door up to kind of finding these niche protocols like, Frozen Walrus and Grape. And I think it does a really good job at doing that. It's a very big flywheel effect is what they call it, similar to the 3-3 scenarios, where it takes protocol engagement, and user acquisition. But once the flywheel starts, the rewards really start showing, and we'll be able to offer better emissions. Even us at Frozen Walrus, I know Juan's emissions are over, but Frozen Walrus's emissions, I'll stop them completely once we get on this platform and just allow a decentralized method of incentivizing this liquidity. And it may not be as much as Walrus Share, but with Walrus Share not being inflationary, it allows us to do a lot of things, and it's very cheap liquidity that we can rent out. But that is it. Hopefully that was a good explanation.
Yeah, I think it was a good explanation, but it went a little fast and it had a lot in it. So let's take this apart a little bit. First of all, you're using abbreviations like AMM. I think most people know that it's an automated market maker that DEXs use, like decentralized exchanges use. But that's it's good to know for anyone who's listening. So if I get it correctly, then protocols can incentivize certain pairs, so that people basically you can make LP on that pair and then can get it incentivized for the protocol. Am I right?
Yeah. So the
All right.
entire emission model is based on voting governance week over week.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
And then the second thing you mentioned was that you basically get the voting token. What's the voting token called?
V Glacier.
V Glacier. Okay, so you can get V Glacier, but then you vote with that V Glacier for certain pairs.
Yep. And so go ahead.
So what does that do? Like, if you're the only one, you get all of the revenue. I understood that one because that's a big one. But what does that do? So I've got some V Glacier. I vote for a certain pair. What happens?
So then it looks at, so after the end of the week, which the end of the epoch usually ends on Wednesdays. So at the end of that epoch, it would see your weighted vote in that pair. It would take and disperse the rewards, aka the fees of that pairing for the week, and disperse it to you and all other parties that voted on that. And let's say the total governance vote and weighted vote for Grape Mem was 10% of all V Glacier. The new emission model the following week would be 10% of all Glacier being emitted would then go to the Grape Mem pool and be represented in the APRs and everything else.
Awesome. So that's the thing. So not only if you take a certain pair and you vote for it, you get you get emissions from that vote, but then next week that pair actually grows, basically, or
Exactly.
it gets more emissions.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and do you even have to sell V Glacier, or do you just keep it for voting?
So you'll be
As
diluted eventually because there's always going to be more glacier, which means there's always going to be more need for locking V glacier to keep up with the governance.
all right.
But you can obviously you get a V NFT is what they call it that represents your position, and you're more than welcome to sell that on secondary markets. They usually go for premiums for protocols like Equalizer, Thena, Solidly, all the same models that we're using Velodrome. These VNFTs have seen some pretty good volume, and they also so once you're locked in, it's kind of nice because a lot of locking features means that you can't do anything. But with these specifically, you're able to sell that, and it could be quite lucrative to sell positions, buy and sell them. So I see a whole secondary market of war going on with selling these NFTs and trying to find cheap fees based on the current Glacier price. So people that are selling them are going to constantly have to monitor: am I giving enough premium? What if Glacier shoots up in price? Am I selling this too cheap? So there's a lot of play there as well. But it's nice because even if you're locked in this position of Glacier, you still have your V Glacier that you're more than welcome to sell in the secondary market.
All right. So the only way, aside from buying V Glacier, the buying or selling it, the only way to get V Glacier is through holding NFTs. Do you get them through the NFTs?
So the NFT is created through a lock. So there's a lock modal on the website, similar to like
Hmm.
minting X Walrus or minting X Grape, anything like that. It's just like that. You'll just go there. It has a calendar on it as the website. You'll just click. You can use the presets of like 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 4 years, or you can
Oh dear.
choose a date in the calendar for the lock period. And once you commit to that in the contract, it then sends your Glacier somewhere, and then gives you back a representation of V Glacier back. And
Ah, I
and
see.
before
So that
so
creates an NFT that has a
yeah,
certain lock period.
and so also these dang I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Carry on.
Cutting off.
I have
It
another question
happens
on that.
sometimes this morning.
I have another question on that. Like, if you then create that NFT, is it then the I assume the NFT has a picture too. Is the end of the lock time represented on the picture so that any new buyer can see that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure LB may know a little bit more because he loves solid leaf forks. But
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that there is metadata that tells you how long the V glaciers lock for. I'm not 100% certain, but most of them are just images with like actual text that gives you all the information. They're not like some super fancy artistic ones. But it doesn't mean in the future they can't be artistic or represented in some different way. But I mean, again, LB may know a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean it's just an NFT, and NFT just reads from some AWS server or something like that of what image you want to display. So you can display any image, and you can change it later on down the line too. And they would have metadata that would display okay lock times and other statistics probably and things like that, which would all be displayed on the site, and then you can make an image around that too. So like it's really up to however you want to display it, and you know as an NFT you can customize it too.
Wait. So if you lock up your V Glacier, you get an NFT and you can customize it as a client.
Oh no,
No,
you. I
he's
mean,
saying for the protocol.
I mean,
Yeah, the
maybe like
protocol.
technically you could do that. Like technically you could allow people to do that, but there's like an added feature. But the admin of an NFT contract can generally change the images and whatnot of whatever
Yeah,
NFTs are.
I get that.
Yeah.
No, I was just asking like how would it work for the client, because I think most people listening here would be interested in that mostly, um, unless we've got some protocol creators in our crew right now, then they need the other info. Um, okay, but that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool concept actually. And you said something about 33%. What's that about?
I was just making an example of if there was
Oh,
just to level it out and try and explain it in easier terms, just like how the voting governance affects the emission model. And again, the same amount of glacier will be emitted no matter what, and all votes are always 100%. So there's always 100% weighted of votes. There can never be more than 100%. And so what happens is if there was 3 pools, and each of them got equal representation of weighted vote, being 33% of the total votes, the new emission model would be 33% of Glacier would go to each pair as the emitted. And also, if only one of those out of the 3 pairings were to get 100% of the weighted vote, then it would receive 100% of the emissions of Glacier for the following week. Hopefully, I'm explaining that well.
Yeah, I think I got it. I was stupid by reading questions at the same time, but that
It's
means I
okay.
can ask those. Uh, um, so first, your mate here, Top Gun Hatch, is actually explaining something. It's community coordinated liquidity of the Glacier token. If people ape in and vote on a pool and get half the total vote, they get half the total emission for Glacier the following week on that pair, meaning the APR goes up. All right, and
Yeah.
then John Titer says, say someone needed to liquidate the V Glacier position for some reason, what marketplace would the V Glacier be able to be sold on?
So I think we're going to try and be a bit agnostic in the marketplaces we choose. But I would love to use Alpha Shares. They've been pretty good to us with Walrus Anglers Club. And then we also are going to put them on NF Trade because that's one of the most popular platforms for AVAX. And it's better to get into as many marketplaces as possible just so that there's no scam addresses, even OpenSea at that point. Just anything that will verify us because like LB knows, I mean, a lot of people try and scam on these secondary marketplaces, so it's best to get your contract verified.
Yeah, yeah, and they're more than happy to do that. And you may as well
Yep.
be around on all the platforms that are used, and whatever people want to use, barring royalty fees or like platform fees and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
All
bullish solidly Forks. I really like him. When you mentioned to me that I like balance of course anyway. The tech is really cool, but I've been bullish solidly Forks because I've been playing them. I like them, and I think they're really good incentive. They're really good cheap liquidity provider for protocols. So protocols, as you mentioned prior, is that protocols can bribe certain LPs, and it's essentially a way to incentivize liquidity for your tokens without having to inflate a random token rapidly, like say in the pools, in like a Toonfork pools, something like that. You can actually bribe, and then you can target certain TVL even of how much liquidity you want in those LPs too, based on the bribes and whatnots. And it works out to be much cheaper than just minting a coin and inflating it as rewards.
It's I like to explain that a little bit. When we say cheaper liquidity, it's kind of hard when you're just like in a protocol and you may not understand what that means as a protocol owner. But what it essentially means is that the amount of Walrus share that we're giving out and the value that we place on Walrus share is kind of arbitrary, but it's still an emitted model. And if you're looking for value in Walrus share and you're sitting there emitting the token, and then you also have, no Walrus being printed, a lot of times in these tune forks, you see Walrus share go down because they loses that value of being able to print. So, not only are you inflating your supply even more and expecting the community to continue LP it, but it becomes very expensive for the protocol and at the protocol's expense. Whereas we can stop the emissions of Walrus share, allow it to remain the exact same that it is, and then we can use Glacier and bribes and trading fees, which is generated by users, to kind of fill out the ecosystem. And it oftentimes becomes a lot cheaper for that protocol to kind of engage votes and have new emission models based on kind of their participation. And it's not at the protocol's expense. And of course, we can do bribes for very cheap. Even if we add $2,000, $3,000 of bribes every month and split that up evenly week over week, you'll see that because we may have less liquidity than some of the larger pairs or the larger protocols, that our APRs are going to be higher than them. We are more volatile as a pair, and we get to reward those people with higher emissions.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it
that makes
works really
sense.
good for obviously it's a dual benefit. It's a benefit for the protocols because you're giving out cheap, you're incentivizing cheap liquidity or incentivizing it very cheap compared to inflation. but then you're also benefiting the token holders because you don't have to pump out high inflation to incentivize those LPs in the first place. So it's like a win-win. And if you've looked at if anyone's looked at Velodrome, Athena, Solidly, Equalizer, um, that have come up in the last sort of 6 months or so, you see the APRs are pretty insane. Even for some of the blue chip pairs are pretty insane. Like 40, 50, they can get up to 100% even plus on blue chip pairs, which is pretty crazy.
Yep. And right now we're kind of fighting whether we want to really go big and do a big raise and a capital raise where we offer NFTs for protocol revenue, a percentage of it, or do we want to stay kind of underground and allow the protocol to work? So the two differences here is Equalizer went with that model of less is more. And they did not do a big capital raise and they kind of just continued working and now it's caught on. And Thena went with the opposite way, and they went heavy on raising capital, and big partnerships. And so we plan on meeting in the middle there. We may do some type of capital raise with NFTs, or we may just keep it where we're at currently and then just kind of ride it out and allow the V33 method to take place and eventually become and capture more liquidity on the AVAX chain, because it's a niche to be filled. There's not a lot of chains that don't have Solidly on them already. AVAX is one of the few of the top 10 chains. And also it's a model that I think fills the gap with what and the biggest market share taken in AVAX is 95% being by Trader Joe. There's nobody that's combated with Trader Joe yet. And I think this is a model that can compete with them. Now they do have their new order book and they're able to offer some pretty good spreads and low fees. But I still think this model, and not being a centralized emission model like Trader Joe, is still a niche to be filled here. And again, I don't think a lot of people like the user interface of Joe. So I really do think that this model can specifically take some of that market share, and allow participating protocols. And just so you guys know, I'm talking with some of the big boys. We're trying to make it huge. I've talked with Thena's founder. I've talked with people that have connections to Frax, people that have connections to multi-chain. I've talked to Equalizer's founder. I'm literally trying to take this and scale this as big as possible. It's not easy because I am a hillbilly, and these people have to take me at face value. But obviously, we have DeFi Mark as our main dev, who worked at Certic for over a year, has built over 1,000 custom solution contracts. I think he's very good. And I think that we have the team to really scale this out, and it really just comes down to biz dev and who's going to get attached to it. We do have a commitment from a very large protocol that does a lot of trade fees, that they're going to be tweeting about us, but they try and be DEX agnostic, which means they don't like to particularly back anyone. But either way, we are getting protocols involved, and I think as we have more to show for, you're going to see some big partnerships. We have a big Volt partnership that we're going to be announcing. That's going to come on board day one. So that if you like auto compounding volts, then you'll definitely like what we're offering there. So
Very nice.
Awesome.
Yes.
Let's get to some more questions here. Need Grape is the first one to ask questions of both of you guys. So, hey, Lame Billy and Lame Hillbilly. so hyped to have you all both here on an AMA. Two of the best protocol leads on AVAX. Thanks for all your work on everything. Question one is, LB, what pairs do you want to vote to incentivize the most on Glacier for Grape Finance? Do you think this will probably be pretty consistent, or will Grape's vote likely change week to week? Do you plan to offer bribes to the community? So a question for you, LB.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's in our interest to incentivize Grape LPs, through bribes, um, and sort of direct at least most of our vote power to that. But it's something that we can also adjust, week to week, depending on where we want liquidity to go within our tokens, and also as well, there may be opportunities where we can, vote for, or at least offer some vote power to, LPs that are very high fee earning as well. so that we can essentially earn those fees, which is also a little bit of a bonus for us. And then we can, distribute that. We can stockpile that. So there's a few options there, but obviously incentivizing our LPs is important, and I think that's why I really like the solid lead model as well, because it makes it really nice.
Yeah,
And
and another thing is that like if Grape was the only, say the worst case scenario, Grape had V Glacier and was voting on their pairs week over week, you know, LB from the Treasury would be earning Grape and Mem week over week, and he can do whatever he wants. He can keep the Mem from those trade fees and then burn the Grape or whatever other method of approach he wants to do, give it back to holders, whatever it is. But it's just like an extra, like he said, an extra incentive for protocols that they can kind of take control back of these trade fees that normally would be, collected and dumped by people like Trader Joe. But the revenue model is different for us. The protocol itself, we don't earn anything on trade fees. The 100% of the trade fees, not 99% or 50%. 0% of the trade fees go to the team. We'll obviously have V Glacier given to us, and we'll be able to vote on pairs and earn that way. But I think it's important that I let everyone know that, it's a different type of model where we earn the exact same way that everybody else in the protocol earns. And I think that's kind of special.
yeah, that is very special. That's really cool. And that brings us to the second question, LB. What will the Treasury do with the trading fees it collects from V Glacier voting? Are you going to do that? Are you going to break it and burn the Grape, or are you going to do something else with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it will be based on the circumstance at that point in time, but there are a lot of things that we can do with it, and it's good to collect it. We can keep it as protocol liquidity. We can, split and burn part of it, split and burn and buy back. We can give it back to, LPs or holders of or stakers of another token, things like that. So it gives us flexibility, in other words. And I mean, I don't know exactly what we're gonna do right now, but the options are there. We'll probably try a few different things actually.
Awesome. Then the third question, because Neat Grape knows how to split it out. The third question is, what's in store for Vinium and Glacier? Any alpha on partnerships, and in general, how the two teams plan to work together to create good things? And this is specifically asked for Vinium. So, will Glacier have anything to do with Vinium?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we talk pretty often, and we're very open to working with each other in any way we can.
Hell, we're friends, LB.
Exactly. So, I mean, the idea that we're not going to work together with Vinium and any protocols that we even make in the future is kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like a guarantee, to be honest. But
Yeah, I've been trying to get this man to work with me forever, and we've just been too busy. But now we're like getting to the point where we're like, I think that our communities are so ingrained with each other.
yeah.
I think that like
Yeah, kind
there's a lot of future plans with like how can we bring these two massive communities that have been supporting us, and in turn we support them by just trying to be here and do something different and build. Like what can we do that can tie these two communities together? And we're two of the protocols that were some of the biggest on AVAX at one point. And like most people, there was a lot of deflation in the entire market with volume and everything else. And the Tune Fork model is a bitch and a half to run, to be honest. And we both understand that, and we talk a lot about it. And there's going to be a lot that we can do in the future. Me and him have looked at several different things to try and run together to bring more value to U.S. holders. And I think eventually we'll land on something. But always, I think that we're going to keep our ears open and try and work together because, LB has a special place in my heart. When I had no dev and I came from Snow and Fox, he came in, asked for nothing in return, and helped me build out contracts when I knew nothing. I was just a mod that turned into a protocol owner somehow. And this guy was like, "Here, man, I'll help you," and just gave me all kinds of
It all worked out.
free access. It all worked out. Here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. The community can expect borrowing against the Glacier Fi NFTs, or
Well,
what
I
was
think
gonna be the thing?
I think definitely there'll be some integrations with Vinium as per the lending. I
Mm.
want to work on the isolated markets and sort of change the model of that so that we can, because the problem with the isolated markets right now is that there are liquidations. They need liquidations to function, and that kind of limits um, how what sort of tokens you can put in, and adds
Yeah.
extra risk. So what I want to do is kind of actually move past that to no liquidation isolated
Oh,
pools that will probably like a
interesting.
fixed maturity, and then we can actually offer any tokens very safely. And then obviously NFTs, and NFT lending is works in a similar model actually to that. Um, and NFTs will have value, and they'll be a good model to be borrowed against, and also use as collateral. Maybe get some. Maybe people want to borrow them from you as well. Um, so I mean, the thing is that we're pretty open to kind of anything, and we very collaborative in terms of like how we anything that's a good idea, we put it past each other, and
Yeah.
you know we're
And I
very
also
open.
use LB to vent, and sometimes I have comedy special nights where I call LB
It's
and I start
hilarious.
bitching
Yeah,
about
it's funny.
I'll start bitching about other protocols and like how the fuck did they get anything done? And yeah, I mean we
It's
see so much
it's
shit, bad
nice.
shit in the space.
Yeah, it's
LB
funny.
is LB is a chill guy to be bitching about other things too.
Yeah, he usually doesn't. It's usually just me, and then LB laughs because he knows it's true. So it's
Yeah.
pretty fun.
It's funny.
Awesome. Okay, the fourth question here is what's the best way for us Grapes to use Glacier to benefit our own wallets and Grape at the same time with our democratic voting power? It'd be great to coordinate our efforts. Well, that's actually already been answered. Of course, the question was asked before, but it just means that vote on Grape pairs because that means that more of the incentive will go that way. Then the fifth question is, right? Am I correct or did I say
Hmm.
anything wrong? No,
Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
correct.
no,
that's
that
it.
was
Good.
right.
Okay, next one is five. I've heard on the streets, oh man, I have tried on the streets. I've heard on the streets that all trading fees from Glacier go to investors. How does the team get money for protocol development and salaries for their amazing work? I know LHB feed pics fetch top dollar, but still, yeah, yeah, that you kind of already answered that. Yeah, like you're
Yeah.
getting some of those Glacierify tokens as a team member. Is that the only thing, or are you doing some more for protocol development, or is that simply?
So if we allow NFTs to be sold for kind of like a bit of investment, like early on investment, we would do where the NFTs would gain 10% of protocol fees forever, similar to how Athena did it. And if we did that, then of course some of that would go to incentivizing bribes early on, and then the other parts would be for team runway. But right now we have, I think it's 15 or 18% slotted for team allocation out of
Mm,
the entire token supply. And what I'd like to do, I don't know that we will, but we would have 100% of our Glacier 4-year permalocked pretty much, and we would vote for pairs like AVAX, like BTCB or WETH or the Glacier pair, and we would vote on pairs that don't have protocol backing that would be pushing for people to vote for, so that we can keep those as lucrative pairs because those are commonly traded platform tokens for AVAX, and that's how we would get our salaries. So again, we'd have 18%. So we would have a pretty high governance, but we probably wouldn't do it all at once just so that we don't dilute governance too much at the beginning. But we will over time continue to collect V Glacier as a team and vote for it through one multi-sig and then disperse those fees evenly amongst the team. And that would be our salaries. Of course, it would scale up massively if the platform were to get as popular as Thena. But we also get 5% of the emissions, the total emissions. And so I haven't touched on how the emission schedule works. So Glacier will launch with 150 million tokens, and over time, that will. So the first week we'll do 2% of the total emission model. So that means 150 million tokens. 2% of that is 3 million. So 3 million would be given out over the first week over all of the pairs. And then the next week it would decay by 1%, which would be 2.7 million. And week over week it would decay by 1%. Sorry. brain fart. So eventually, the amount of Glacier given out reduces week over week, but the team does receive 5% of that. So the 3 million, we would earn 5% of that back into the team wallet, so that we could turn it back into V Glacier and continue increasing, so that our governance power doesn't become diluted amongst the entire community, and we're able to still make lucrative pairings and vote on them for more emissions for the following week.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds pretty fair. So you're kind of, making sure that you keep 18% of the voting power, and
Yep,
you
and
work
if
with
the protocol doesn't get popular, or the protocol's not paying very good, then we're not paid very good. So it's heavily incentivized for us to work in the
DeFi
best interest
life.
of the yeah. So it's highly, it's we need to do the same thing the users are doing, because we want the same effect.
All right. I'm going to go to some of the other questions that might not necessarily pertain to you, like Hillbilly, but if you have anything to add or say, you're welcome to chime in. All right, Saint is asking, do we have plans to incorporate Frax or FXS? I don't know what that is, into Vinium. I'm also curious to your interest in Frax Finance. I recently did a deep dive. Don't know why I haven't sooner, and love what I'm hearing initially. Do you have any holdings in the protocol? Frax is nice, yeah.
Yeah, I like Frax. The FXS is the Frax share. I do own some Frax
Ah,
share,
okay.
and I think it's a good long-term hold. Not financial advice, but I think they're a good protocol. And I like them just because they're more like DeFi orientated rather than say USDC, even though they are backed. A lot of their backing is by USDC, but at the same time they're not like you know they're not like Circle as a company. But they're also they started off fractionally algorithmic, so they have a very low uh, requirement for collateral, which makes them very capital efficient too. And then they also have they bring out a lot of they're basically making a whole ecosystem of DeFi products too, which is they have a bridge system, they have a swap system, and then they're bringing out or they just brought out oh actually they brought out a lending system too, which uses CDPs, so it's kind of like a MIM sort of deal where you know put up Bitcoin or whatever, then you can mint Frax using that, which is pretty cool too. And then they have very recently, or like a few months ago, they launched their Frax ETH staking, which is the Frax validators on ETH, and they have a really cool method for that too. And then they're also planning on doing a Frax Bitcoin for bridging of actual Bitcoin over to DeFi as well. Considering now that something like Ren BTC doesn't exist anymore, there's not really many options if you want to bridge Bitcoin over to DeFi. You can't really just mint WBTC. You have to go through an exchange.
Mm.
AVAX has
There is BTCB now.
yeah, exactly. AVAX has the BTCB, which is pretty cool. I just used it yesterday actually, and it works pretty well. So they're technically competing with Frax on that, but I'm also bullish, BTCB anyway. But
And that
because
also means that you can convert BTCB back to Bitcoin, right?
yeah,
Yeah, through
exactly.
the core wallet allows you to do it natively. So
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool system.
it's much better than WBTC. I don't think you can do that. I mean, I haven't found the way to do that. I think only people on that multi-sig can mint it, which is it means that you possibly have troubles with the peg sometimes, which they have recently. Um, because you can't just people can't just redeem it easily. It has to go through a custodian to do it. But
All right.
I like Frax. They're a whole sort of ecosystem, and there's a lot of stuff that I didn't explain here, but because it's a big protocol, they're doing quite a lot of
Yeah,
things, and they
and
also.
I think we
Frax is
should.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna
I was
mention.
just say, Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe you should invite them at some point.
Oh man, they're
Just
big.
go.
That'd be pretty cool. But
So
Yeah.
it's interesting you should say that because Frax is looking to go cross chain with a lot of their liquidity. If you notice that Frax only has like 200, 300K volume on
yeah.
AVAX, it's one of those protocols that we see as a interesting opportunity that would we would welcome to participate in governance and try and get involved. And they were one of Thena's first partners. And after talking to Thena's founder, he believes that he can get me a sit down with Frax to be a local partner on AVAX
Mm,
to kind of start bridging and hosting some liquidity for Frax, um, which would be massive, obviously. But we're still working on that, so it's nothing confirmed. But those are the kind of partnerships that we're looking for. People that protocols that are doing really well on other chains and have not bridged over to AVAX are very special because if we can get them to use our platform rather than the current platforms that they're using, or even just over Trader Joe, that brings a lot of volume from their previous customer base and user acquisition standpoint. So that's really what we're looking for is someone like Frax or multi-chain that can really bring in new liquidity to AVAX because we don't just want to compete with Trader Joe. We want to bring more liquidity to AVAX in general. So that's one
Yeah.
of the things that we're looking for. But Frax would be a great get.
yeah, it's
Awesome.
definitely
Hey,
needed because there is like there's no Frax liquidity, hardly anything. Pretty much no Frax share liquidity either on AVAX. And Frax loves this sort of stuff too. I mean, they're obviously they're on they're one of the first on Thena as you just mentioned, but they love they love the bribing mechanisms. They're like one of the biggest holders of Curve, and they use that pretty much to incentivize liquidity really nicely on on ETH and Arbitrum, and they're really smart with that sort of stuff. So it's in their interest to do it to come over.
100%
well,
it is.
let's hope this is gonna work out then. Hey, Top Gun Hatch has entered the stage, and I did that because he
Hey,
was typing all kinds of cool stuff. So welcome, man.
how you
How you
going, man?
doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Going good, man.
Doing pretty
What's been
alright.
happening?
Shit, nothing much. Just all Glacier all the time.
Nice.
Been just grinding and grinding, trying to keep Austin focused. We go to the gym. He talks. He talks about Glacier. I go to his house. He talks about Glacier. I'm
People
glad
don't
he
know
has
what kind of
somebody.
breed I am, man. I literally hyper focus on something until I know it's a success. Like,
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
I have nothing. I have no backing. I usually do everything very grassroots, and like my entire focus is like to be successful in my career here in DeFi, and it's not easy. And it's not easy to do it honestly and with integrity, and those are two big driving factors that a lot of people here in DeFi don't do. But it's one of the reasons that I'm so ingrained with LB is because he also does the same uh, as me, and so I just want successful stuff. And sometimes it takes a certain level of obsession, which it sucks, but
Yeah.
like that's just how I'm built. Is like if I am passionate about something, then it turns into a bit of an obsession. So yes, I talk about it quite frequently with Dylan, and it usually is my main focus on a day to day basis because that's what my job is. I feel like is to make sure that I'm thinking of every small aspect that can make Glacier just even a notch better than it currently stands. And I try and leave no stone unturned.
Yeah,
And it
it's
saves.
cool, by the way, Lame Hillbilly, because I remember talking to you way before Walrus. I think it was still with Snowy Owl that you'd just taken over, and you said like, I've got only a few $100 to my name, but I'm just gonna go for this, and you're still here. That
Yeah.
means you have been going for this, and you've actually made it work, and it's quite an impressive story. I mean, you really made it work, and it's cool. You
Yeah,
started out as a mod and you just went with it. That's I really respect that. But Dylan or Top Gun Hedge, um, did you want to share anything because you've been typing all kinds of cool stuff?
No, I was just kind of like supplementing visuals for what Austin was talking about. So like I posted some APRs from
Very nice
Equalizer on
APRs. Yeah.
Phantom. Yeah, and I mean, there's two kinds of APRs you can have on one of these style dexes. You've got your liquidity pair APRs, just your normal farming for their token is equal. You've got those APRs, which is what I posted first, and then there's voting APRs. So you get there's a secondary way to make money, like Austin said, and that's using your equal you gain from the LPs, converting that into V equal and voting. And there's a whole subsystem of voting APRs. It's just a really neat system. Compared to what we originally planned on with the balancer decks, I was a little discouraged with balancer because it didn't matter how many times me and Austin talked. It wasn't clicking. It's a very complicated system. Whereas this style decks is very simple. And I like it a lot because there's no, like you said, the team doesn't get protocol fees. There's not, those trading fees go right back to the pockets of the community, which is, in my opinion, what decentralized finance should be more like. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, and there's another thing about that with Beats and Equal. They're both on Phantom. Beats being the balancer fork, and Equalizer being the solidly fork, similar to what Glacier will be now. It's a very interesting concept because balancer is really an investment platform because it has weighted pools and other things. And Equal is more of a trading platform. It's somewhere where people go and say, look, I know I can get cheaper fees here. I'm going to go from Phantom to USDC or whatever else, and oftentimes you see a lot more volume. And so just to reiterate that, over the last couple of weeks, what we've seen is that Equal has 3 times Beethoven has 3 times the TVL as Equalizer right now, but Equalizer drops 4 times the volume of beats, and that's because it usually results in cheaper trade fees and better spreads than what a balancer protocol can offer. So and like Dylan said, it's much more simplistic. I always like to try and speak in layman terms because I try and build products for DeFi for people that have just came into DeFi or don't know about DeFi, or just don't understand it to a high level. People outside of our communities, a lot of the most successful people in this space are super high level in this and have been in it for 4 or 5 years, and they understand the ins and outs of most protocols before they launch. My goal is to give everyday investors that actually will use these platforms for years to come as we grow as an industry, and try and make it easier to give them the same success and the same tools that some of the big leagues have, and do that through education, and eventually hopefully they're able to apply that and become much better traders and much better investors in DeFi.
That's an awesome goal, and I really support that. And if I can help, let me know. There's another thing here, and this is a real challenge for this kind of thing. Like, if you can do this in layman's terms, you're doing well. There's a question from Grape. Hey, lawyer, barrister. But Lame Hill Billy, you can take it as well if you want, Austin. The last few weeks, we've seen a number of headlines around draft legislations from countries, including Australia, the UK, and the US, regarding crypto regulations. I know it's still pretty early, but do you have thoughts on the impact these kinds of regulations and bills may have on DeFi and Grape Finium and Walrus Glacier as they stand right now? How can we protect or future-proof ourselves from lawmakers who don't really understand digital assets but try and regulate them anyway?
I have tons of thoughts on this.
Yeah.
LB, if I can
You've
go
go
got 5
first.
minutes.
Yeah, so I see it a lot, and of course, being in this industry and having and trying to build a career here, more regulation is always scary. That's why I pay an absorbent amount of money for a lawyer. But the thing is like the recent crackdown. I see the biggest thing is talking about the SEC crackdown on Kraken staking, and so I wanted to make sure that I talked on that point that the reason that people like that are getting taken down is one because they don't have enough lobbyists in their pockets, like Coinbase, but also two, this is a non-transparent platform. This is a centralized exchange that can do whatever they want, and things like some of the other platforms that were taken down over this big bear market that pretty much went bankrupt and took all of your money. They can do that on Kraken as well, because whenever you sign up, then you kind of give the rights from the terms that you agreed upon, that you're giving the rights during bankruptcy, that those assets are never yours. And that's a scary thing. And so the SEC came in and is trying to protect the investor, and to some extent that's good. Now, what we see in DeFi is that transparency is already there. It's on a chain. It's all public information, and so it's not the same level. And so, if they come for DeFi, it'll be a very different experience. And their point that they made for why they took down Kraken would not be the same point, or couldn't be made as the same way as to why they took it down, and it would be more malicious in my view. So I don't know that they'll ever be able to properly regulate, these DeFi protocols. And a lot of times, what you'll see is these large protocols like Aave and other things. If there's any kind of leadership attached to it, what you oftentimes see is that they're governed by a DAO. And then that DAO has a technology company that manages it, right? And so they're not the owner. The DAO is the owner, but the protocol leads or teams that are being paid in team tokens, they're being, they're kind of off to the side as like, oh, well, we'll just do whatever the DAO says. We're not the actual protocol leader. Now, we all know that's a bit semantics. But again, I think it would stand up in court because they don't know what the hell they're doing. And I think the UK, out of all three, are doing the best as far as like regulations and attempting to do a little bit better. The US, I think, will always screw regular retail over first. It's been very apparent. Gary
They're gonna
Gensler
protect
has not
their
been fighting for
banks.
crypto.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so like you see Coinbase, and a lot of the times you're seeing a lot of these stable coins getting taken down, is actually because the US government is trying to find their piece of the pie, and I think they're doing that with their CBDC coin, which they're going to be picking USDC. Quite honestly, I think that's the only option for them. So people like USDT and everybody else is kind of under fire. You see all the FUD around it. They're unable, they only want one stable coin so that they can issue it, so that they can back it. But realistically, what needs to happen for the U.S. specifically is that they need a whole new set of regulations, a whole new committee, not the SEC, because these tokens and the way that DeFi moves is not the same capacity, or should not be under the same laws. They should make a new digital asset laws, and a new government sector that specifically oversees and has a new set of laws to abide by, because quite honestly, this just is not traditional finance, and they're going to lose a lot of people. And there's so many crypto companies that can't start up in the US because they're making it so difficult. And what we're going to see is, as this, as we continue to explode in popularity for DeFi, I think that they're going to be making a lot of missteps, and oftentimes you're going to see a lot more of this development happening overseas, sadly.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Although, of course, U.S. citizens can also just, create companies overseas.
Yeah.
I recently checked. I mean, I'm in the Netherlands, of course, and I was asking, like, hey, what would it cost for me to start a company? Well, that would be somewhere under 500 euros. It's not that much. But if you're overseas, if you're an American, for example, would be like 1,200, 1,300. Still very doable. So, the thing is, even if you're in the US and you want to do something like that, you can just go overseas and maybe start in the Netherlands or wherever. Right, so it's still possible, but just the U.S. is really shooting its own foot there, by making it so difficult.
Yeah, I want to pay
Yeah.
listen, I want to pay taxes. I want to do everything above board. Like, I want to benefit the US through my business, right? Like, I want that. But they're making it impossible. And that becomes, that's a sore subject for me, because I'm just trying to do the right thing and working in a sector that has a lot of gray areas. But here I am trying to stay, as far to the right way as possible, and they just make it absolutely an asinine to try and do this. You should not, as a U.S. citizen, have to build an LLC in freaking Brazil or somewhere else, so that you're not subject to the same laws. I just think that's insanity. That they should just, if they're protecting the consumer, cool, then protect the consumer and allow businesses to build out. Just like, when the industry of the internet boomed, they had to build new laws and new regulations as we went into a new age. We're going into a new age again, and the problem is that a lot of these traditional platforms have so much lobbyist going on, and they have so much political backing, that the wheels are just moving so slow for crypto, because nobody wants to let off.
Yeah.
Especially in the
Hey,
US.
I've got. All right. I think I want to close this subject because this is a frustration for everyone, the whole
Yeah.
regulation thing. Uh, I still got a question here from Chenko who says, when AMA with Lame Hillbilly? Well, that's right now. Is Vinium going to have any Glacier or frozen walrus isolated pools similar to X-Grape? And are there any other single stake yield bearing tokens in Aave or Benki planned to be added to Vinium's markets? So basically, new Vinium pools?
Yeah. I mean, I get it's technically both yes to both of those. And I mentioned before we'll kind of rework the isolated pool so that we can you know let allow a lot of tokens more easily um, through no liquidations. That's kind of the idea. But yeah, when obviously if you know Glacier wants their tokens to be borrowed against, then for sure that can definitely be added in, and it's pretty easy to do. But I would want to change the model first. Yeah, same for the sort of Benki Aave what do you call yielding tokens. Um, we do want to choose tokens that are probably the stable coins easy to liquidate with good liquidity and whatnot to not have cause any issues. But yeah, it's probably something we'll add in pretty soon as well, alongside the other yielding tokens.
Awesome. Then it's time for some shout outs here in the AMA live chat. I'm seeing good morning from Canada, loving the information I've heard. Can't wait to see the fruits of all this labor. Well, and loving this podcast style, AMA guys. And those were
Yeah.
from Firashi and Not So Savvy or Not So Savvy. And then Sam has a shout out, like everyone talking about how great LP is. I want to say something too. LP gave me my first DeFi job. Been only growing from there. Nikki, you too. Love you both. And there was also a third man, but he turned out to be a bitch. We know who. Yeah.
Damn.
The- we shall not speak of him. Then there is for Not So Savvy is also saying, for your information, UK is talking about creating its own stable
Mhm.
coin. Yeah, that would be one of those CBDCs, right? They're going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
I think most countries will.
and
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hilarious because you can really see it just on the last point on that. Because I don't want to again because it is a sore subject, but it's hilarious that you see all these people kind of denouncing DeFi and its current stance, but all these governments are also like, oh, but I'll also build a
Yeah.
stablecoin on it, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah.
you can't have it both ways, but they're gonna try and they're gonna say,
Yeah.
look, normal people can't make this much money, but the government should be fine to do it. And
It is really insane. Like we've seen in DeFi what happens when you've got a corrupt team, right? You see it all the time. People will dump by rugging, by printing a lot of tokens, or they make tokens illiquid all of a sudden, or any kind of thing, or they even just fail to create it right, which means at some point it just gets bricked and it doesn't work anymore. Like
Mm.
I'm sure the CBDCs won't get bricked by being wrongly built, but all of the other things can still happen, and we're putting a whole lot of trust then in our governments, which they previously didn't have, and it's so strange that that they're obviously getting away with it, and the only country I see having huge protests is France, but they just protest everything. So that I mean that's their general stance. They just
Yeah.
whenever anything happens, they just all go to the streets again. Like no, we don't want change. But
Yeah.
other than that, people are just it seems like everyone is just I don't know, there's so much happening that we're all just dumbfounded. We don't we can't seem to care anymore or something. It's really sad, I think.
Mm.
Um, okay, we went back on that tangent again. It is a sore point, right?
Yeah.
it's hard not to because it's so frustrating.
Mhm.
It is frustrating. I mean, DeFi is sort of one of the few ways that you can still retain some liberty there, with governments not being able to touch what you own. The only other option to do that is owning physical gold or silver, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, all the other things are just in someone's custody. even if you own stocks, you're owning that it's in someone's custody. You're basically, owning a share of a company. Um, that means your investment is in that company's custody, and it's really, I find that really difficult. Like, why is everything you supposedly own in someone's custody? It's I'm very happy with DeFi because that's one of the only things that lessens that. I mean, your token is still in someone's custody, but especially with renounced tokens, like it's really, I mean, it sucks to have your token renounced because then you can change it. I mean, Grape and Wine is renounced, so we can't do anything with it. But that does mean that if you own Grape or Wine, it's not in anyone's custody. It's only in your own, and that's really cool. Um, okay, I didn't want to go on this tangent, did it myself. So I want to go and end this AMA for now, but I'm asking all three of you actually, do you have any last minute shout outs, any alpha, anything you still want to say before we ending this? Go ahead, guys.
Any alpha.
When launch?
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest one is it's wildly determined on kind of Mark's progress with these contracts. We know that Velodrome had some bugs that weren't public. We've heard from other people. So we have to make sure that it's safe. But the real goal is to try and get this out before the end of February. We do have a front end already forked. It is a little bit owed, and I think there's going to be a lot that we have to scrap and redo. And if I have to bring other parties in and do some extra contract work to get this finalized, the goal is to really be first movers on AVAX. And so another alpha is that we're going to be looking on adding the weighted pool mechanic that Balancer has to the solidly style. And I think that's one of the sought after features, and I think that Mark can accomplish it. So we're going to see if we can get that in. Of course, it wouldn't be at launch, but it would be something that we would go for because I do like the weighted pools of having ETFs. And if we can add that to solidly, I think it's a match made in heaven.
Very nice.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it's good to have a lot of confidence in Mark. I think he's an awesome dev, doing good stuff. I mean, there are a lot of awesome devs here. LB, you are one too. But it's good to have these guys
Mark's
together,
a good
working
guy.
together.
Yeah.
Love that.
Mark's definitely top guy, top dev. So
Yeah,
in good hands.
If it's any consolation to the community, I would have taken LB.
But he was too
he's
busy.
just busy. He's just busy.
He's too busy.
You know, that's the hard part about both of us is that we have so much commitment to these protocols. It's very difficult for us to find time to work together because it's like if we lose commitments on these, then it could be seen that we're doing money grabs because we're like moving on to the next thing, which is something I got called out for in my chat by the most tone deaf user I've ever seen in my life last night, screaming that all kinds of shit because he hadn't read one article in the last 6 months that I've posted. And so
Glacier's a money grab. Is that what
yeah, it was Glacier.
Oh, man.
Well, he's saying that like I'm moving from protocol to protocol, and I said, and he was like, and the devs just rake in money. He was given the whole spiel that usually is actually kind of true for most protocol owners that they just launch the next thing until and continue to try and gain revenue that way. And it was just really tone deaf because it was clear that it was almost like copy and pasted because it did not apply to me because he was like the devs are raking in the entire time, and I was
Maybe
like, buddy, I haven't made
maybe it was
money in
just
7 months.
Maybe it was just doing a standard fudding run to get the tokens to be cheaper so that he could buy in. Because that's
I
what a
don't know
lot
that
of
they
guys
can
do.
get cheaper there, Nikki. They're pretty cheap. But no,
No,
it was wild because I was like, buddy, I haven't made any money in like 7 months. I don't know what you mean. I don't sell tokens. I'm literally here on charity work at this point. At the cost of I have 3 kids. I have a mortgage. I pay an absorbent amount of money every month over month, and I'm sitting here, running out of runway because like I'm trying to do it the right way, and to come in and say that is the most tone deaf bullshit I've ever heard.
No, well,
All right.
can't win.
Yeah, you can't. There's no pleasing some people. All right. I'm gonna end this AMA here. I'm thanking you guys for being here on stage with
thanks,
me,
guys, for coming
and
up. It was good to
Yeah,
have
it
you
was really
on.
fun.
Absolutely.
I agree. I agree. I always try and join in on any AMA I'm privy to, and it's always fun to talk with the Grape community because again, I think some of our communities are so ingrained that most of the people here already knew me, but it's still fun to talk in different communities and try and get good protocols out there. That's all we're trying to do, guys.
Yeah. It's always
Yeah,
fun, and I
awesome.
think the people wanted to hear as well, hear firsthand from the man himself
Yeah.
about Glacier.
Yeah,
So
hopefully I was able to answer some questions and people were able to learn from it. And I will have a lot of educational videos specifically geared towards
nice.
V3 dexes, so that you'll feel confident whenever you're about to invest. Because that's one of the big things, is I don't like people feeling like, oh, someone that knows this more is going to have an unfair advantage. I want to make sure that the playing field is as even as possible. So I'll be creating some content around it. So if you're unfamiliar or you're confused with something, just check out my YouTube channel. I'll start posting some videos on it. I'm trying to get more active on there and be a YouTuber as well.
Nice.
It's difficult because the DeFi YouTubers usually just throw a bunch of pump and dumps and AMAs on their
Yeah.
stream. So I don't like doing that, but I'm all
Yeah.
for educating.
Oh well, it depends. I mean, everyone has their own style. I think you can make your own style and it just
Definitely.
make it very
Definitely.
sincere. Just looking at your bonks, for example, the man takes 3 hours or more per project when
For
he
sure.
explains something, and that's his style and it works for him. And I think every kind of style has a certain crowd. So
Mm,
I wish you all the best with that, man. That's cool.
yeah.
And with that said, I want to thank the community for asking all of their questions. And yeah, gonna see you all next week again.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And we actually have an AMA with only burns tomorrow. I'm gonna do an announcement on that. But tomorrow,
Awesome.
or maybe later today,
Cool.
depending where you are.
Are you gonna run that? Because I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
sure.
I'll run
I'll be there.
it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Until next week, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.